The rain fell in thin silver threads, painting the world in gray. Checkpoint Meridian stood like a fortress at the edge of the unknown. Concrete barriers, razor wire, soldiers with rifles cradled against their chests. Every step, every salute, every barked command felt rehearsed, like actors in a play no one dared to interrupt. And then she appeared. Sophia stood at the outer fence, alone, silent, a figure carved from stillness. No uniform, no medals, just an ordinary jacket, already darkened by the drizzle, and a small badge clipped to her belt. Nothing about her looked remarkable, and yet she didn't fidget, didn't shuffle, didn't look lost. She simply stood. A young officer noticed her first. His boots splashed through puddles as he approached. "Ma'am, this is a restricted zone. Identification." Sophia handed him the badge without a word. He squinted, rain streaking down his face. "Civilian oversight," he muttered, almost laughing. "We're busy out here, you'll need to." His radio crackled violently. Orders screamed through the static. He hesitated, pointed at her. "Wait here." And then he was gone. From above, in his elevated post, Colonel Robert Marlowe watched the scene unfold. A civilian here? He'd been in uniform for nearly 3 decades. He had no patience for paper pushers who thought they could understand the front lines. His jaw clenched. He straightened his cap and began the long stride down toward her. The soldiers noticed. They always noticed when Marlowe moved with intent. A few smirked knowingly. The colonel hated interruptions. Sophia didn't move as he approached. Not a flinch. Not a blink. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Her gaze steady, his brimming with irritation. "This isn't a tourist attraction," Marlowe said, his voice deep, iron-wrapped. "Credentials. All of them." She calmly pointed to her badge. Marlowe leaned in, examining it like a man sizing up a cheap counterfeit. Then came the laugh, sharp, dismissive, echoing across the checkpoint. Soldiers turned their heads. Civilian oversight. "They sent you? We people even know about real security." He raised his voice on purpose so the nearby officers could hear. A few chuckled under their breath. Rain dripped off his cap, pooling at his boots. Sophia stood still, water running down her face, her jacket heavy with it. But she showed no discomfort. "Listen up," Marlowe called out, spreading his arms wide. "Apparently, headquarters thinks we need babysitting. This is," he gestured toward Sophia, "our new overseer." More laughter. More smirks. Sophia said nothing. She simply watched. Marlowe's irritation grew. He stepped closer, looming over her. "You got somewhere better to be." His tone was a mockery of politeness. "Or are we too slow for your schedule?" That was when she finally spoke. Her voice was calm, steady, and frighteningly certain. "You might want to reconsider your approach, Colonel." The words cut like a blade. Marlowe's face flushed red. He barked back louder. "Is that a threat?" From a civilian. And then silence. Because everyone heard it. The sound. Engines. Low, heavy, powerful. Growing louder through the rain. Marlowe frowned. He checked his watch. No transport scheduled. No convoys expected. And yet, 3 black SUVs rolled into view, their headlights slicing through the mist. Flags snapped on their hoods. Behind them, armored vehicles. The convoy stopped exactly where Sophia stood. Soldiers froze. Radios hissed. The rain seemed to pause. The door of the lead SUV opened. A man in a black suit stepped out. Every soldier recognized him instantly. Michael Keene, head of the president's personal security detail. He ignored Marlowe completely. Walked straight to Sophia. "Director Hale," he said, his voice carrying like a verdict. "The president is ready for your assessment." The air shattered into stunned silence. All eyes flicked from Keene to Sophia, then back to Marlowe. His smirk vanished. He looked again at the badge, and only now did he see what he'd missed, the platinum trim, the tiny presidential seal, the mark of Lazarus Division. The rain drummed harder, but no one moved. No one breathed. Who was Sophia Hale, really? Why had the president himself sent her to this forgotten checkpoint in the rain? And what did she already know that Colonel Marlowe refused to see? The checkpoint was frozen in disbelief. Rain hammered the concrete, dripping off helmets and rifles, but no one moved. Soldiers who had laughed minutes earlier now stood stiff, their eyes darting between Sophia and Colonel Marlowe. The silence pressed against them, heavier than the storm. Marlowe's throat tightened. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Director? Did Keene just call her director? Michael Keene, the president's most trusted shadow, offered Sophia a leather folder stamped with a crimson insignia. Even the boldest soldiers dared not breathe when they saw it. Classified, presidential authority only. Your findings have been verified, Keene said, his tone edged with respect. Proceed as authorized. Sophia nodded once, her movements precise, deliberate. She turned to Marlowe. Colonel, she said evenly, your checkpoint is compromised. 3 vulnerabilities. I spotted them within 10 minutes of arrival. Her words dropped like stones in a quiet pond. Ripples of shock moved through the soldiers. Marlowe's jaw clenched. His hands twitched at his sides. 27 years of service, medals lining his chest. And here stood a woman in a rain-soaked civilian jacket, tearing apart everything he believed was airtight. What vulnerabilities, he managed, his voice low, defensive. Sophia's gaze did not waver. Your vehicle scanning process leaves a 7-second gap when switching systems. Enough time to slip something through. She gestured toward the perimeter fence. Your sensors? 3 blind spots. Anyone who knows where could walk in unnoticed. She tapped the folder. And your communications encryption? Broken. Compromised 3 months ago. Your enemies know it. You've been broadcasting vulnerabilities to the world. The words sliced deeper than any blade. Gasps whispered among the ranks. A lieutenant's eyes flickered with guilt. She, young, sharp, underestimated, had tried to warn Marlowe before. But he hadn't listened. Impossible, Marlowe muttered, almost to himself. Our systems are sound. Sophia cut him off. Not loud, not harsh, but final. Colonel, your habits are the weakness. Complacency is the breach. You see uniforms, ranks, medals. I see blind spots. Her voice didn't rise, but every soldier heard. For a moment, the rain itself seemed to hush, as if waiting for his reply. Marlowe's mouth opened again, but this time his radio screamed to life. Colonel. Incoming call. Secretary of Defense on secure line. The words hit like a hammer. Soldiers straightened instantly. The Secretary of Defense calling for her? A secure phone was shoved into Marlowe's hand. He listened for a few seconds, his face draining of color. When the call ended, he looked smaller somehow. His broad shoulders caved in. Listen to Director Hale, he announced hoarsely. Implement every order she gives. Now. The same men who had laughed earlier now stood at rigid attention, their eyes fixed on Sophia with newfound fear and respect. She didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge their shift in loyalty. Instead, she walked past Marlowe, straight into the command center. Soldiers parted for her like the tide. Inside, the air smelled of damp uniforms and stale coffee. Maps glowed on digital screens, red dots marking patrols and scanning ranges. Sophia moved with certainty, pulling up footage, marking gaps, pointing out flaws without hesitation. Her voice was calm, deliberate, surgical. Here, a 7-second gap. Here, blind spot. Here, outdated encryption. Officers scrambled, taking notes, running corrections in real time. Gone was their earlier smirk. Now they leaned in, desperate to capture every word. At the back of the room, Marlowe stood silent. Humiliation burned his chest, but beneath it, something else stirred. Shame, recognition, a slow, painful understanding. Sophia paused, her eyes flicking toward the young lieutenant in communications, Anna Ferris. Lieutenant Ferris identified me immediately when I arrived, she said aloud. She tried to inform you discreetly, Colonel. The room went silent. Marlowe's face burned. He remembered dismissing her, waving her off without listening. Now every soldier knew it too. Sophia's voice softened, but only slightly. Good intelligence is worthless if leaders refuse to hear it. Remember that. The words weren't just for him. They were for everyone. She handed Marlowe a sealed folder. My full assessment. Implement every change within 48 hours. A Lazarus team arrives tomorrow to assist. Then, without waiting for his response, she turned and walked out. Rain clung to her hair, to her jacket, but she carried herself as if the storm belonged to her. The convoy waited. Black SUVs idling, lights glowing in the mist. Soldiers saluted her as she passed. Not mockery now. Not disbelief. Respect. Sophia climbed into the lead vehicle. Inside, an aide whispered, "Director, was this necessary? Couldn't compliance have been ordered after your report?" She looked back at the checkpoint, where Marlowe stood in the rain, clutching the folder like a lifeline. Soldiers already moved with urgency, recalibrating equipment, rewriting protocols. "People show you who they are," she said quietly, "when they think no one important is watching." The vulnerabilities weren't just in their systems. The convoy pulled away. Marlowe remained in the rain, watching the taillights disappear. His face held a mix of humiliation, respect, and something new, the dawning realization that he had just witnessed power of a kind he'd never understood. Not medals, not rank, but authority that didn't need to shout to be obeyed. But Sophia's mission wasn't just about one checkpoint. The rain-soaked confrontation was only the beginning. The real story had started weeks earlier, in the halls of the Pentagon, where her warnings were ignored, and in the Oval Office, where the president made a decision that would change everything. 2 weeks earlier, the Pentagon. The air inside was heavy with the faint hum of fluorescent lights, the kind that made even decorated generals look pale and tired. A long oak table stretched across the conference room, its polished surface lined with folders, steaming mugs of untouched coffee, and men in uniforms weighed down by medals. At the far end stood Sophia Hale. Her jacket was civilian, her voice calm, her words precise. "Your checkpoints are vulnerable," she said, sliding a series of satellite images and schematics across the table. 3 weaknesses appear across multiple installations. If exploited, the consequences will be catastrophic. Colonel Robert Marlowe leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, lips curling into something between a smirk and a sneer. His voice dripped with condescension. "Ms. Hale," he emphasized her civilian title like a weapon, "these are theoretical scenarios. In real conditions, my men operate with precision. We've run thousands of vehicles, shipments, escorts through Meridian without a single breach." Sophia didn't flinch. "Colonel, I modeled these weaknesses using your own data. It's not theory, it's practice." A 4-star general cleared his throat, weary of the exchange. "We appreciate your thoroughness, Director Hale, but our security experts assure us the redundancies are more than sufficient. What looks like a weakness on paper is covered in the field." Polite nods followed around the table. Murmurs of agreement. Bureaucratic echoes. Sophia noticed something. Not one of them looked directly at the folder sitting in front of them. The folder bore the platinum seal of the president himself. They saw it. They just pretended not to. Her voice remained steady. "Gentlemen, your human oversight is the flaw. Your commanders are repeating patterns. Predictable patterns. Predictable means exploitable." Marlowe's chair creaked as he leaned forward, his voice louder this time. "Theoretical," he repeated, the words snapping like a whip. "Unless you have proof of a breach, your concerns are irrelevant." Sophia's gaze locked on his. Not angry, not pleading, just unshakably certain. "By the time you have proof, Colonel, people will already be dead." The silence that followed wasn't thoughtful. It was dismissive, the kind of silence that says, "We've humored you long enough." Finally, the general at the head of the table nodded once. "We'll take your concerns under advisement." The bureaucratic kiss of death. Sophia gathered her materials calmly, though inside her pulse hammered. She had expected this. She knew their pride would blind them, which was why she already had her next move planned. Later that same afternoon, the White House. The Oval Office smelled faintly of polished wood and leather. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, falling across the president's desk. He looked up as Sophia entered, keen at her side. "Director Hale, the president said, gesturing for her to sit. "I've just read your report. You're certain of these vulnerabilities?" "Yes, sir." He studied her, his face grave. "The Joint Chiefs assure me our protocols are sound." "They're wrong." The words came out sharp, unsoftened. But that was why she had been chosen. Sophia Hale didn't play politics. She didn't massage egos. She told the truth, whether people wanted it or not. The president leaned back, eyes narrowing in thought. "What do you recommend?" "Unannounced field verification," Sophia said, without hesitation. "I need to inspect the checkpoints myself. No warning. No advance notice. Not even to the commanders." The president tilted his head. "Not even to me." His tone carried a faint smile, testing her. "Especially not to you, sir. The element of surprise is essential." The smile vanished, replaced by something heavier. He nodded slowly. "Authorized. Choose the checkpoint you believe is most vulnerable." Sophia glanced down at her folder, though she already knew the answer. Meridian. "Why Meridian?" the president asked. Her eyes flickered with something colder than rain. "Because its commander believes he can't be wrong. That kind of arrogance blinds entire units. It creates habits. Habits create gaps. And gaps," she paused, letting the silence fill the room, "are where enemies live." The president's hand tapped once on his desk, firm and decisive. "Then Meridian it is. But I'll be present for one of these assessments. I want to see what Lazarus can do." Sophia gave the faintest nod. "Yes, sir. You'll see." That night, in her apartment, Sophia stood by her window. The city lights glittered through the drizzle, reflecting off glass and asphalt. She watched the streets below as her reflection hovered faintly in the pane, calm, unreadable, untouchable. Her mind replayed the meeting, the smirks, the dismissals, the arrogance. She remembered Marlowe's voice in particular, theoretical. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. He wouldn't think it theoretical when the storm arrived at Meridian. And so, the trap was set. But Sophia's mission was never just about exposing flaws in the system. It was about exposing people. The rain-soaked checkpoint was only the surface. Beneath it lay the real test. What happens when arrogance meets truth face to face? The command center was thick with tension. Screens glowed with maps, camera feeds, encrypted codes. Soldiers stood stiff, their uniforms damp from the rain, eyes darting nervously as Sophia Hale walked to the center of the room. Her presence pulled the air tight, as though even the walls leaned in to listen. Colonel Robert Marlowe lingered at the back, his face pale, the secure phone call from the Secretary of Defense still echoing in his head. 27 years of service, undone in 10 minutes by a woman in civilian clothes. Sophia didn't glance at him. Not yet. Instead, she tapped the touchpad, pulling security footage onto the largest screen. "Your scanning procedure," she said calmly. "Watch." The soldiers leaned forward as the footage played. Vehicles rolled through, guards checked paperwork, scanners pulsed, and then, just as Sophia had warned, a pause. 7 seconds. Small. Almost invisible. But enough. Here's where a skilled operative could pass an object, a weapon, even a person, without detection. Murmurs rippled through the room. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Someone cursed under their breath. Sophia didn't stop. She pulled up another display, a map of Meridian's perimeter. 3 sections glowed red. "Blind spots," she said. "Created by equipment upgrades no one recalibrated. An enemy could crawl through undetected." A major stiffened. "Impossible. Those sensors were calibrated just last month." "They were tested," Sophia corrected, her tone cutting like glass. "Not calibrated. Tested against original specs that no longer apply. Look." She overlaid diagnostic data. The gaps shone like wounds on the map. The major fell silent. Sophia moved to the final piece. "Your communications encryption." A file appeared on the screen, a classified alert bulletin dated 3 months earlier. This cipher was compromised in the Redstone breach. Your IT department flagged it as low priority. Your transmissions have been open to anyone watching since then. The room went still. At the back, a young voice spoke up. "Lieutenant Anna Ferris." "I flagged that, ma'am. I sent 3 reports up the chain. They were never acknowledged." Every head turned toward her. The silence was crushing. Sophia met the lieutenant's gaze, her voice softer now. "I know. You did your job. Leadership failed you." Her eyes flicked toward Marlowe, finally acknowledging him. The colonel's face burned. He remembered her voice, remembered brushing her aside. He had dismissed her warnings the same way he had dismissed Sophia's badge. Sophia's words fell like a verdict. Good intelligence is worthless if those in command refuse to hear it. Marlowe flinched. For the next hour, Sophia directed the room with surgical precision. No notes. No hesitation. She assigned tasks to department heads, marked vulnerabilities in red on digital maps, rewrote protocols on the spot. Officers scribbled frantically, their pens scratching louder than the storm outside. "Immediate implementation," she ordered. "Lazarus will send a team tomorrow to assist. I expect compliance in 48 hours. Not a single officer argued. Not anymore. When it was over, the room exhaled. Soldiers hurried to their stations, their steps quick, their voices low but urgent. The mockery, the smirks, the arrogance, gone. Replaced by something else. Fear, determination, respect. Only Colonel Marlowe remained behind, frozen at the edge of the room. His shoulders, once square, sagged beneath the weight of realization. When the last officer had left, he stepped forward. His boots echoed on the concrete floor. "Director Hale." Sophia was packing her folder, calm as ever. "Colonel." He swallowed hard. His voice cracked slightly, stripped of its usual authority. "I owe you an apology." She looked up, her eyes steady, unflinching. "No, Colonel. You owe your people better leadership." The words pierced deeper than any insult. They weren't cruel. They were honest. And that honesty cut him in a way mockery never could. Sophia continued, her tone even but firm. "Start by listening to them, especially those who see what you miss. Lieutenant Ferris recognized me instantly. She tried to alert you. That awareness deserves recognition, not dismissal." Marlowe's throat tightened. He glanced at the young lieutenant's empty chair, shame twisting his gut. Sophia handed him a sealed folder. "My complete assessment. Implement it. You have 48 hours. Her voice left no room for doubt. Not a request. A command. Marlowe nodded once. "Yes, Director." The ma'am that would have slipped from his lips 20 minutes earlier was gone. He gave her the title she had earned. Sophia closed her case, walked to the door, and paused. For the first time all night, she allowed herself a breath, long and quiet. The rain had stopped outside, leaving the air clear, sharp, almost new. She stepped into it, soldiers straightening instinctively as she passed. Not out of fear, out of recognition. Colonel Marlowe stood in the command center doorway, watching her go. He clutched the folder tight against his chest. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about medals, promotions, or glory. He was thinking about listening. And he wondered, had he just met the person who would change the course of his entire career? But this was only the beginning. Change comes slowly, painfully, and some resist until the very end. What would happen to Colonel Marlowe in the days that followed? Would Sophia's lesson take root, or would pride destroy him once and for all? 3 days after the convoy disappeared into the mist, Checkpoint Meridian felt different. The rain had gone, replaced by a sharp, cold clarity. Soldiers moved with new urgency. Conversations were clipped, purposeful. Equipment that had gathered dust was now recalibrated, retested, and rechecked. The air carried a quiet tension, not of arrogance, but of accountability. Colonel Robert Marlowe sat in his office, the sealed folder Sophia had handed him lying open across his desk. He had read it once, then again, then a third time. Each page carried more weight than the medals on his chest. What had begun as humiliation now felt like revelation. A knock at the door. "Enter," he called. Lieutenant Anna Ferris stepped inside, crisp uniform, spine straight. She carried the morning security report, her voice steady. Sir, encryption protocols have been upgraded. Full transition complete. All systems secure. Marlowe gestured to the chair across from him. Sit, Lieutenant. Her eyes flickered with surprise. Junior officers were not invited to sit in the colonel's office. She remained standing, report clutched in her hands. Sir, that's an order. Slowly she sat. Marlowe studied her, seeing her not as just another junior officer, but as the soldier who had spotted what he had missed, the one Sophia Hale had pointed out with deliberate care. You recognized her immediately, didn't you? He asked. Ferris hesitated. Yes, sir. And you tried to warn me. Yes, sir. I dismissed you. It wasn't a question. Ferris kept her composure, though her knuckles whitened against the paper. You were engaged, sir. It wasn't my place. Marlowe cut her off, his voice firmer. It was exactly your place. And I failed you. Her eyes widened. She had not expected this. He leaned forward, sliding a new protocol draft across the desk. From this day forward, anyone in this checkpoint, regardless of rank, is authorized to use the phrase security override if they identify a potential threat. Those words will stop everything, even me. Understood? Ferris blinked, stunned. Sir, this breaks chain of command. Sometimes chain of command is the weakness, Marlowe said quietly. Sometimes the person who sees most clearly is the one ignored. I won't let that happen again. Ferris's lips parted in shock. Then she straightened, her voice firmer than before. Understood, sir. Marlowe nodded once. Good. And effective immediately, you're promoted. Head of Communications Security. She froze. Sir, that's a captain's role. Then I'll see you where captain's bars. For the first time in days, Marlowe allowed himself the faintest smile. Director Hale was right about you. Weeks later, the Pentagon. A briefing room filled with commanders, some still bristling from their own surprise encounters with Lazarus operatives. Whispers circled. Resentment simmered. At the front stood Marlowe, no longer colonel, but brigadier general. He looked across the faces, men and women who thought they were unshakable, just as he once had. 3 weeks ago, he began, I thought a civilian with a badge couldn't teach me anything about security. I was wrong. Dead wrong. The room stirred, uneasy. A colonel spoke up. With respect, sir, being ambushed by undercover inspectors isn't a fair measure of readiness. Marlowe's voice rose, sharper now. Fair? Since when were security threats ever fair? Our enemies don't play by our rules. They don't announce themselves. Neither should our tests. He tapped the screen. Statistics appeared. Every checkpoint had failed at least 2 critical areas. You're not incompetent. You're human. And humans grow comfortable. Predictable. That's why Lazarus exists. To catch the cracks before the enemy does. Silence. Then, reluctant nods. They knew he was right, even if pride burned their throats. At the back of a room, unseen by most, Sophia Hale watched. Calm. Silent. Her presence barely acknowledged, yet shaping everything. When the briefing ended and the room emptied, she approached. General Marlowe, she said with a slight nod. He turned, standing straighter. Director Hale, congratulations. You adapted faster than most. He studied her, searching her face. Tell me honestly, was I targeted specifically? Her lips curved, almost imperceptibly. What do you think, General? I think nothing at Lazarus happens by chance. Her silence was confirmation enough. Marlowe exhaled, a small, bitter laugh escaping him. Then I suppose I was meant to fail. No, Sophia said quietly. You were meant to learn. Most people respond to humiliation with anger. You chose growth instead. Her words lingered like the echo of rain. 6 months later, Checkpoint Meridian. A new assessment. A young officer, plain clothes, quiet presence, a badge on her belt. The soldiers noticed, whispered, watched. Captain Anna Ferris approached, professional, calm. Good morning. Credentials, please. The badge was handed over. Ferris examined it carefully, then smiled. Lazarus Division. We've been expecting you. Her radio crackled to life as she keyed the words. Security override. Lazarus operative at main entrance. Activate assessment protocols. No laughter this time. No dismissal. The checkpoint shifted instantly, seamlessly, into response mode. Professional. Efficient. Prepared. Somewhere far away, Sophia Hale read the report. Her lips curved into a faint, satisfied smile. In the end, it hadn't been the storm, the convoy, or even her authority that had changed Meridian. It had been awareness. A seed planted in the rain. And seeds, once planted, grow. Sometimes, the people who change the world aren't the loudest voices in the room. Sometimes, they're the ones standing quietly in the rain, carrying truths no one wants to hear, until it's too late to ignore. What about you? Have you ever seen someone underestimated, only to reveal strength or wisdom that shocked everyone? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it.